Welcome to the Catholic Passage Podcast. My name is John Sandy, and I'm today's host. This podcast aims to pursue the truth, an authentic Catholic life, a deep integration of faith and reason, and a joyful community of families, raising the next generation of the Catholic faithful. Today's guest is Isaac Huss, who is a Catholic content creator, freelance writer, and marketing guru from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm really excited to share our dialogue through this episode whereby Isaac and I discuss his background, life as a single Catholic, his dating life, and so much more. We hope you enjoy our conversation and that it might bless you in some way. All right, everybody, I am here today with guest Isaac Huss. I'm happy to have you so that people know a little background. I went to school with Isaac for a number of years, like most of the podcast guests, like all stories start at St. Thomas. And Isaac was, I think, entered a year after I entered. In any event, he's in the Twin City metro area. I've kind of made like a rundown of different titles you've had, Isaac. At first, you were like a theology teacher. I think you taught at Providence at one time too.
I was, yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you did some freelance writing. I know at some point you were like a private contractor or like did work for CatholicMatch.com.
True content creator.
So that's kind of how I view, when I think of Isaac Huss, I think of content creator, like, which could mean a lot of different things, right? Like, I don't know if that's freelance writer, educator, all of the above, but with like a unique Catholic spin and take and perspective on things. So
sweet.
I'm happy to have you here. What are you currently doing, Isaac? Like, what's your current job title and role?
Yeah, so I'm a director of marketing and communications at the Nativity of Our Lord Catholic Church, St. Paul, Minnesota, USA.
Do you live in St. Paul?
I live in Minneapolis.
Same place, that same condo that I visited you by, like kind of the river in the U of M area-ish?
No, that was the last place, and I actually missed that place in some ways. In other ways, it's apartment living has its constraints. I missed the pool. I missed the light rail being right next to the apartment. I have a yard now. I have windows all the way around. I'm in a lovely neighborhood. There's even a bus nearby, so it's not all lost. And there are lakes.
But you're in Minneapolis proper now.
Minneapolis proper, southwest side. Almost Edina, if you're familiar.
Got it. And you graduated St. Thomas what, in like 08?
2008. Right on time.
And Catholic Studies and Philosophy, right?
Yes, sir.
So that you're aware, Isaac, like the Catholic Passage podcast sort of has, I guess, the way I think of it, like two goals and two thematic streams going through it to reach reach people who listen. The first of which is like raising kids, raising families. How do we impart the Catholic faith and educate the next generation of the Catholic faithful, in today's world, right? And so that's certainly one part of it. The other part of it is like, okay, usually people who are raising children are between the ages of, say, 27, 25 maybe, and 50 or whatever, right? 55. And so like the other thing that we're trying to accomplish is like for that demographic, how can we create content that leads them to Christ in a way that's not being done now, or, kind of with a Catholic worldview that doesn't seem stifled or too regimented, but authentic and real, and build connection that way through various social media platforms, Spotify, whatever, right?
Love it.
And I think you're interesting, and this is why I wanted to interview you, have you on as a podcast guest. Because like you kind of like, one may think, just so everybody knows, because I know Isaac, but so that everybody knows, Isaac, number one, is not only not married, has never been married. And number two, I think Isaac's about my age, like 39, 40. But so Isaac's never been married, and Isaac doesn't have children, although he has some nieces and nephews. But Isaac is
14.
Come again, 14 nieces
14,
and nephews.
yeah.
How many siblings do you have? Because don't you have a brother that's a priest?
No, my brother is a lawyer, in fact. Close.
Oh, that's right, because he went to St. Thomas Law.
Right, but he did 3 years at seminary and SJV, and we overlapped 1 year. My last year there was his freshman year.
Was he in the military?
He's still a Marine Corps. Now he's a major.
Oh, okay. Good
an
for him.
officer and lawyer, and he teaches now at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland.
Wow. How many kids does he have?
He has three boys and now a girl himself,
Okay.
and the other 10 are my older sisters. Actually, she's in South Texas.
Got it. Well, so some might wonder, why does John Sandy have Isaac Huss on a Catholic Passage podcast aimed in part at, helping parents raise children when he himself has no children and he himself is not married? And it's because, and I don't mind saying this, we're realists too. And the reality is that the divorce rate in America is not good. There are a lot of people that either have never been married or are divorced that are dating and are Catholic and take their Catholic faith seriously. But that doesn't necessarily mean they got hitched at the age of 24. And so
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting to bring you on, Isaac, to kind of talk about, hey, you're 39, 40 years old, you're on the market, I think. And like, what's it like kind of navigating the world of dating today versus like maybe when we were in college, at least not in seminary? And like, how do you navigate that as a Catholic man? And so I'm gonna like open mic night, like go ahead, give it to me, because I don't know the first thing. Like when I started dating my wife, the advent of like Catholic match apps, Tinder, like none of that existed. You had to like go to a brick and mortar to
Yep.
meet your spouse. Um,
You had to go to the spouse store. You could
yeah.
just order her online.
Well, you could always do that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
suppose.
what's the deal?
Well, if anyone out there listening knows how to navigate it, please let us know because I'm still trying to figure it out myself. But in all seriousness, I'll say I think what part of the fun part of you and I in our age group, and I just listened to the Paul Kolker episode earlier today, where I found that you were a class of '03 in high school, right?
Yeah, you got it.
So we are the same. We are the same class in high school. But no, I think what's fun and also mind blowing about our generation and our particular age group is we we had to like learn how to live in a world without the internet for the most part, without computers, without certainly smartphones. I can specifically remember how my life changed when we got our own desktop computer in our home. It was a Gateway 3000. It had cow spots on the side of the box because it was from the Silicon Prairie, not from the Silicon Valley. So we had to learn how to like dial. We had to learn how to dial a phone that was attached to the wall. There were even phones, as you may remember, that you would have to like rotate each of the numbers. The internet, you had to wait for it to dial into whatever phone line. And it got disconnected when your sister picked up the phone while you were trying to play Civilization 2 with your friends, in a different town. So we had to learn how to do all that, and then we also had to like learn the technology in real time. And now we have to live in a world where people can't even remember what it was like or weren't born yet when before the internet or before smartphones. So that's cool, and I think that's fun, and I think historians should interview us in 50 years if we're still around to ask us like, yeah, what was it like? But also I think that absolutely applies to the dating life too. Is like I was single back then, back in the 20s, before there was Match.com and there was Catholic Match, and you would never admit that you were on those things because that meant you were a social and real life failure, or worse, you were some sort of creep, that like went on the internet to cruise for babes. Like watch Napoleon Dynamite, and that was not like a caricature so much of like online dating as it was like, yeah, that's kind of what we think it is. So yeah, it's been a crazy ride myself to have dated in all of these different eras. And I can say it's different. It is absolutely different, and it changed. And there were like specific moments where the dating thing changed based upon what sort of technology was available. A and B, how the people reacted and responded. The people who were dating to these new technologies, which did, for better or for worse, and I think we can all kind of say for the most part for worse, ushered in new habits, new sort of dating trends. And frankly, I think what's happening is people aren't even dating so much anymore. And I think that's in large part due to, yeah, what's changed about how we date and the technology we use.
Well, the other thing that I think has changed, at least from the outside perspective looking in, is these apps and dating things, and it's almost like you have a Cliff Notes version of like the who, what, where, when, why. Religion's important. I work out
Oh,
twice a week. I don't smoke weed. I do this. I do that. I'm interested in somebody who loves travel and Vietnamese, and like la 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 la. And it's almost like it turns into like a data, like nope, yes, nope. Like you're looking at resumes for an
no,
application, whereas
totally.
when I was going through that process, you actually had to go on a date to figure that out. Like first was like the physical attraction.
Hmm.
And then you got to get know like, okay, is this surface level? Do we have things in common? And like I just think that there was a part of that that's beneficial. And let me explain what I mean by that. Like my wife, when I met her, was Catholic for sure. And attended mass every week. But I'm not certain that like I would have necessarily put her in a category where like she was wearing like wool shirts and self-mortification acts and like going to daily mass and saying 6 rosaries a day. Like
You would not necessarily put her in.
no. That doesn't mean that like she didn't have some type of holiness about her, but like her Catholic faith maybe has developed more as she's aged than like a snapshot when she was 22. And that doesn't mean that like she was a-religious or didn't care about her Catholic faith, but like I think there's a way in which humans are complicated, right? And like when we talk about matters of like religion, like that can be complicated. Like my brother
Hmm.
dated a girl who was Lutheran. Her dad was like, or maybe it was Presbyterian, I can't remember. But he was like an elder in the church. And like very much
Nice.
they were not like, hey, you're gonna be Catholic. This is a good thing. And Chris actually was married in a non-Catholic, I think it was a Lutheran church, with the Catholic Church's blessing. Kelly, his wife, is now Catholic. But like, I guess my
Sweet.
point is that had Chris like just judged the book by its cover and been like, well, she's Christian, but she's not Catholic. So next,
Not good enough.
not yeah, next, swipe right. We would have missed that.
Yep.
And like, for example, my mom grew up
Any such
Jewish.
cases.
Yeah, my mom grew up Jewish, is now
Nice.
Catholic, raised me Catholic. So I guess my point in all of that is like, how is a Catholic man? I mean, what do you, I think I could see people making the mistake of saying like, if you don't fit these preconceived Catholic notions of holiness, I don't want to take you on a date because you're not where I'm at or whatever that is, right?
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you run into that at all? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I would say it's a tough one because there are a lot of different, sort of ways we describe our faith and our religiosity. And sometimes I think part of the sort of gatekeeping that we do is that as a result of kind of getting burned by, I was dating somebody who said he or she was Catholic, and then it turned out, that he was sacrificing animals to the gods in the backyard. That wasn't okay. That's not okay. Or or maybe more to the point, like, oh, I thought this person was Catholic, but then they wanted to sleep with me on the first date or something. Which interestingly doesn't make you any less of a Catholic. It just makes you a maybe more of a sinner.
Right.
But we're all sinners too, so it's like you can't just be like, well, no obvious sins, are acceptable. It's like, actually, if you don't notice any obvious sins, then the ones that are hiding might be actually worse because they're trying to hide something from you. So it's actually interesting. Sometimes it's helpful to have a healthy sense of how imperfect somebody is, and specifically how maybe imperfect their practice of the faith is, because not only does that mean this person's real and again isn't hiding it, but also that you aren't, you don't go into it with rose colored glasses yourself. So, part of it, the whole like evaluation process has to be sort of a both and. You have ideas of what you're looking for, of course, and and some things are better than others. But then also this sense of, okay, this isn't just a, choose your own adventure or, build your own bride, so to speak. And the contrary is that the whole point of dating, and specifically in finding a marriage partner, is that this person would be complementary to you, not the same. This is the beauty of marrying the opposite sex, that there should be something profoundly different about this person and not just based upon their DNA or the body parts or whatever else. So yeah, I think it's just kind of, it's to go meta on you. I think this is kind of the ultimate challenge of dating, not even specifically the Catholic issue, is how much do you want to be saying, oh, I love this person because they're just like me, or they're just like exactly what I'm looking for, and how much are you actually benefited by kind of the opposite, and what God has in store that can complement the things that you already have, the things that you bring to the table, but also like even the things that we're looking for sometimes are just like sort of reflections of the things that we are, that we like. Sometimes doesn't make for a great, long-term match. I'm not sure I answered your question, but
no, I think that's right though. I mean, I think it's a great perspective that sometimes when you want just a reflection of yourself, it's like, well, then marry yourself,
yeah,
But then on the flip side too, I mean, there is something to be said about, well, even though I'll use the opposite sex just because I'm a man, but like, oh, I like Samantha, but the problem is, she's an avowed atheist, right? Like that's probably a bridge you're never going to be able to, like, because you never want to change somebody either. Like go into it thinking like, oh, I'll convert them. But
it can't be something that you're hoping will happen after the fact. That's for sure.
yeah. And so there is a level of judgment that's probably appropriate there in terms of like choosing somebody that like you will have a shared faith with.
Yep.
But I guess my point is like to what extent? And that's what I'm getting at. To what
Yep.
degree?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting you say, because I can think of particularly one good friend of ours from the seminary who, when he started dating his now wife, she wasn't about atheist, or at the very least, she was entirely, lacking any sort of religiosity. Which I think in that case was good because she was something of a blank slate. But yeah, I think the main thing that I'm looking for, and ultimately I can only really speak to my own perspective and experiences, is this person is this person an equal in terms of, do I see this person as somebody who is a good match, somebody who can speak my language? Like, a lot of people are really adamant about having somebody who makes them laugh. And I think to a certain extent that can be a vanity of sorts, as if, I just need to be entertained for the rest of my life. But I think there's something to that, and maybe more so, someone who laughs at my jokes, like someone who gets my sense of humor, and even to take that a step further, like to find the joy and maybe even the humor in really hard times. Someone who, who can actually help you through hard times. Someone who can speak to the very difficult challenges, things that inevitably come up like death. But to be able to see the world through the same lens together. And ultimately, the church and the Catholic and Christian faith does have a very specific way of seeing the world, to the point where even something as simple as, it's good to be alive. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can kind of be worked out in terms of, I have a buddy whose wife is joining the church this Friday. They've been together for 15 years, I think, because they were like freshman college sweethearts. They were engaged for years and years because she was going through medical school, and she's kind of been something of a staunch Lutheran, and all of a sudden, through the course of the years, finally she decided she wants to become a Catholic, and it's beautiful because it did, it was not an ultimatum, it was not whatever, it was something that she came to. But how you decide, okay, I'm willing to date and to marry a non-Catholic, it's in some ways there's no easy obvious answer, but there are, I think, specific issues that you have to match up on in order to move forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, not that you're gonna like I'm using you as my entertainment for this podcast, and I just want like shock value to make the interviews interesting. But a few things. First off, are you dating somebody actively right now?
Nobody in particular.
And do you think that your lack of being married, whatever that is, because obviously you're seeking to obtain marriage, right?
I
Would
am.
that be fair? Like you feel called to the married life.
Yeah, I do feel like I'm being drawn to it in a good way. I understand God. In some ways, leaves some of these things up to us. But yeah, without putting too fine of a point on it, yeah, I feel like I'm called to get married and have a family.
And of course, this is not a therapy session, and I am not your therapist. I fully admit that. And if I'm getting way too
Well,
real,
what are
just
we doing here, John?
yeah, just let me know, Isaac.
By the
But
way, as a side note, I was listening to the one other episode that I've heard from you or on this podcast, and I now feel compelled to call you Johnny.
oh, did you hear Dave Moore's interview?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Time I thought you were John.
No, I'm
It's
Johnny
been it's
because my
been a
dad.
lot.
So back to Isaac. What do you think's been the biggest stumbling block to that? Like roadblock? Like, do you think that like it's okay? Like it just happens on God's time and that might not be when you're 25, you know? Like so like I phrased it as block. Maybe it's not a block. It's just the timing hasn't been there for whatever reason.
Yeah, I do think timing is a real thing. I mean, you were talking with Paul Kolker about how, a good seminarian, yeah, not to put too fine of a point on it, but as we understand, like someone who's really leaning into formation is not like working on a backup plan and process.
Right.
And part of that, has its drawbacks, but like, yeah, I mean, we were specifically asked not only not to date when we were in the seminary, but not even to flirt with women, which, some of us were better at than others. But just to say, like, sitting in a class, Dr. Burry's, psychology of marriage and the family class. And, part of me is like, okay, I think I'm mostly out of here. And so this will be helpful long term, but also like, priests need to know about the psychology of marriage and the family. So it wasn't all just a ruse. And that was my senior year. But just to say, he specifically said like, I don't know, something like 80% of people meet their spouse in college. And not just like, oh, it's just, well, a lot of people, if not most people, meet there, that there is something of a challenge to meeting a spouse after college. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm graduating from the seminary. I'm finishing college without having dated a single woman, without having properly flirted with one. And yeah, you leave, and like I literally went to the library that next summer to figure out how to date women. Like, is there like a handbook for this, dating for dummies or something? So yeah, just to say, like, I think to try to explain to you and the world why I'm still single these days. No, I think there's something about you have a lot more opportunity in college. I should say that I did meet a woman while I was in college who then I dated after college, after seminary, who then I asked to be married, to marry. So I was engaged and I was with her for 3 years, from age 23, 24 to 26, 27, somewhere in there. And I don't have any specific regrets about that. It was a really nice Catholic relationship. But the fact that that ended, I mean, we're talking like, 27 years old by the time you're kind of ready to really seriously date again. You're in your late 20s, you meaning me. So I mean, like, then there's a sense of like, well, surely it's just a matter of time until you find the next marriageable woman. After a while, it becomes less clear that that woman's right around the corner. But I mean, again, it's not my time, it's God's time. And I can certainly say, yeah, maybe a decision here or there along the way may have been a setback of sorts, or maybe it unnecessarily delayed things. But yeah, how would I possibly know any of that? But
Yeah.
we'll find out, on the other side.
The one thing I remember about Burry's class, I took a psychology class, or I wasn't like family marriage stuff. I think it was just gen psych, like a general psych class. But he used to do marriage counseling and
Burry, you mean?
yeah, yeah. And actually his son was like a few years ahead of me in law school, Joe.
Okay.
And maybe they're both Joe, but the prof, the psych prof, I remember he told me
Oh,
our
it's
class,
John is the dad, John.
John's the dad.
Yeah.
Thanks. He told me, and he told our class, you know, when I'm doing marriage counseling, one of the first indicators that I know that a couple's going to make it is regardless of their problems, regardless of what brings them to my office, if they touch each other, which I thought was so interesting. Like if
Yep.
like one of them puts his hand on their knee or the other puts their hand or they hold hands,
Yep.
like he's like, but if they sit on opposite ends of the couch or like don't touch each other the entire time. He's like, that's usually one of the first indicators I can tell that like this isn't going anywhere good. I always remember that. Like I just thought that was really telling. Like it's not what they said, it's how they interacted.
Yeah. Interesting. Were you going anywhere specifically with
No. No, it's just you brought
them?
up Burry, and I remember thinking that's the one thing I remember from Burry's class. Was
Well, I maybe this is the same conversation, and maybe it was some other time. But he also, I remember him specifically saying if they could talk about parts of their relationship, maybe even it was years and years ago, but if they could talk about something in their relationship with warm feelings and with like, oh, remember that time, you know, that was a really nice indicator that yeah, there's still warmth there, there's still love. And yeah, other couples like would have a hard time saying nice things about anything about their spouse or any memories. And yeah, that was another thing. I was like, oh, yeah, that I could see why that would be a problem.
Well, so you talked a little bit about like, and I totally agree with you because when I was talking with Colker, we were talking more about like vocation, like what do we do now?
Yep,
Um, but I mean, same principle with you, like, and I felt this way too. Who do I date now? Like, and how do I date? Because
yep.
really, like, it's almost like you that now started dating as if you were a college freshman again at the age of 22.
Hmm.
So it was basically a reset of those 4 years.
Or at the very least, like you weren't able to, you know, like I think it's really it's sometimes it's a cliche of like you need to like become friends first, but I do think that some of the best candidates for a romantic relationship are people that you become good friends with. And that was just not something that was terribly easy to do in the seminary anyway. Even when they were like totally on the up and up, like platonic, you just weren't around women all the time, most of the time.
Right.
So yeah, I think a lot of what's good about meeting people in college is that you form these friend groups, you get to know each other, you get to, you know, to learn each other's sense of humor, a shared background. You have, you know, you have all these things, yeah, that you kind of can start with momentum. And then when you meet somebody after college, yeah, oftentimes you are kind of starting from zero and try to get to 60 sometimes. And sometimes you try to do that on the first date. And it's like, well, you know, you can't judge it the same way because this is oftentimes a perfect stranger.
Do you think seminary helped you though? Like overall, if you had to put like, was it more beneficial or detrimental overall?
Oh,
Do you,
I'd say 1,000%. It was so good. I mean, there's all in all sorts of different ways. I mean, I think we were formed. I'd say the number one thing is that we had a human formation. We people were responsible for us. Like this is kind of crazy when you think about it. People were responsible for our like betterment, like intentionally, personally responsible for, and not just one, you know, a couple, like everybody in that place, like we had a sense of brotherhood to the point where, you know, if you saw your brother struggling, you were expected to lift him up, you know, if you saw him in need, you were expected to at least find out, like, if someone can help him. If you saw him, you know, in need of correction, sometimes that meant you needed to correct him, which meant it was like probably the most fertile time for you to grow into a better person, more, you know, gain good habits, lose the bad ones, get challenged in the ways that maybe you've never been challenged before. And I think it actually does mimic in a lot of ways like a good committed romantic relationship, because if nothing else, that person has to live with you, to deal with you, and has to, you know, I think a lot about, because I've been living by myself for a few years now, how I can just do whatever I want whenever I want. And yes, I that's like for fun, like spontaneous, exciting things. But it also is for stupid stuff like I can go a few weeks without opening my mail. You know, it's kind of a frivolous thing, but like if you have like a spouse, it's like if nothing else, that person is affected by your good or bad decisions.
Right.
And it's like, wait, you haven't been opening your mail? Like, I'll open your mail, you know? But yeah, I think seminary was hugely like beneficial to number one, grow you then, but also to learn like how to, to continue on with good habits. And I also think there's something really good about like re- thinking about what your life would be like, how you want your life to be if you were actually able to, to pursue, a married vocation, because people don't ever think about it. So we had some time to think about how that might look and how you'd want it to go, and then also to pray and to grow in faith and all those things. I've heard there's all sorts of wives out there that are like, "Thank you, Lord, for St. John Vianney Seminary because my husband's a better man as a
Yeah.
result." So
Yeah. CatholicMatch.com then. Like, what did you do for them?
they asked me to make videos about how to date.
And so, like, describe that for me. Like, would you just get up and give like horror stories? Like, I met this one girl at whatever, and then like she like ordered a bunch of stuff and then didn't come back from the bathroom. Like, or like, you know what I mean? Like what
Don't
is that?
ever let your date go to the bathroom. That's the
Yeah.
takeaway.
Yeah, like describe that for me.
Yeah, no, yeah, it goes back to when I was literally just getting out of this broken engagement, and I think for whatever reason, my ex and I were well connected to the Catholic community. We had a lot of friends. We were, both connected to St. Thomas and Catholic studies and all the rest. And I think, not to say it was a perfectly clean break without any sort of heartache. I mean, there's to a certain extent some of that stuff is just unavoidable, and there's things I would have done differently, and maybe she would say the same, but by and large, I think we both would agree, her and I, and also our friends and general family and greater circle, that it was kind of like something of a really good breakup. Like we both could kind of walk away and say we were better for that relationship and maybe even better for the breakup. And so if nothing else, it was kind of this curious thing where like people were curious about it, and in particular somebody who had a publication. So she asked me if I would write about that specific experience of how to kind of move on from, and what did you learn from this relationship and all the rest. So it started just
Wait,
with a
so
friend inviting me to write about it.
but your ex-fiance didn't invite you to write about it.
She
A
did not.
friend,
No, to
right,
clarify.
right. A
But
friend.
interestingly, she, like my ex, even commented on my first article, like, thank you for writing this. I also appreciated A, B, and C. So it was something that it was a public thing, and we were again kind of, I forget how closely acquainted with this with the editor of this website, but it started, yeah, just blogging about it, and then she then asked me to do more writing for that publication, which led me to write, thanks to a shared editor of that publication with Verily magazine, which is still going to this day. That's an all women's magazine though, so they asked me to write about dating and relationships from the male perspective to the
Ah,
women of the world, which is trippy in its own right.
not a
Um,
Dear Abby, but like a Dear Isaac.
yeah, there. I don't remember them opening up a can of worms quite like that. I don't remember like any sort of mailbag column, but there was definitely some sort of prompts that came my way that was like, and people would send me messages in Instagram or whatever, also comment below like, would you ever write about this or that or the other thing. So there's some sort of reader generated topics for sure. So yeah, I just kind of gained some experience and something of a reputation for being able to answer people's questions, and whether they were explicitly asked or they were kind of on their minds. And then went that became a thing at Catholic Match. I wrote an article there, and then they wanted to do some video stuff, and so they asked me to essentially do what I did in the writing form, but present it in these videos.
Got it. So, question. You have 14 nieces, nephews total.
Yeah.
Is there anything when you're looking at like dating somebody where like there are certain things that are just like non-negotiable off limits? Like, and the reason I ask this is one of my good friends, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. He won't listen to this podcast. His name's Cole. But Cole's your age too, our age. He's 40, not married, no kids, never been married, and he's dating. And he just got out of a relationship with a girl who had a child. And I won't reveal too much because he, some of it was probably told to me in confidence. But the point was, is like,
Probably. But
yeah,
who's to
yeah.
say?
Sorry, Cole, but I'll leave it at this, general enough to just say things were really complicated by the fact that there's this dynamic where she was obviously in a different stage of life than Cole was, even though they were the same age. She had a child to take care of, an ex-spouse or whatever that is to deal with in terms of co-parenting, and it
Yep.
just brought a completely different dynamic
Yeah.
to dating as a 35, 40-year-old. Because let's face it, I don't use baggage as like a negative, but like people have experiences at the age of 35, 40 they're bringing to a situation that they don't necessarily have when they're 22. And
Yep.
how do you deal with that as somebody that like doesn't necessarily have that same thing, Isaac? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anybody, whether whichever side of the equation he or she is on, whether this person has children and has been dating, or is someone who doesn't, who's been, dating somebody who has children. I don't think anybody would ever say it's like simple or easy or, whatever. So I think that is just a super legitimate and frankly large challenge to dating if there's children involved already. I will say, as a result of that, I know people, and it's not an insignificant number, who, if they have children, they will only date other people who also have children.
Interesting.
Because if nothing else, the experience of that changes the way you look at things, and that having children yourself is so much better of a sort of a match than if you don't. So I would just say, yeah, I think sometimes we listen to like the Disney sort of cliches, or truisms that say something like, well, if you love somebody enough, you can make it work, or don't let true love go away, just because it's difficult or people say it can't have. It's like, I mean, there are there are reasons to just say like, no, this is too tough. It's too complicated. On the other hand, I do think, like, thinking about this the other day, like today actually, one of my very good friends, who he and I both kind of joked about how, yeah, can you imagine we'll ever get married at this point? Haha. Well, he got married, of course, found like this incredible woman, and I swear to you, it literally is the best thing that's ever happened to him. Just date this woman and marry him. Like, he's a different guy in all the best ways. So I just talked to him yesterday with all that on my mind, and he's talking about like they're trying to have kids and everything, and I'm like, he is already such a different guy, and having kids is going to profoundly change him even more, and in such a good way. Like people, like, if all goes well, you really grow up. You really mature. You really like your life is not your own in a way that even after you get married, it's dramatically different when you have a child. And I don't need to tell you, but just to say, like, I think, if all goes well, we're better people after we become parents. So I mean, like, to date somebody who is a good parent is like a gift, frankly. And you also have proof that this person is good at this thing. So there's all sorts of good things that can come from dating somebody who has children. And yeah, just to say that if nothing else, there's more people involved that require a level of compatibility. So it just is what it is. But yeah, I would say, yeah, it's a crazy thing. It's kind of fun, like, to talk to somebody about, their relationship they have with their. Oftentimes they say like, this is my best friend who's, 5 years old or 8 years old or whatever, and so they have a bond there that's just really cool and admirable. But yeah, it's a trip for sure.
So, last question. If Isaac could go back, let's say a decade. So you're 40 now, I assume. You're 40,
Just
39,
turned, just turned.
40. You're 30, decade ago. Like, relative to your Catholicism specifically, and kind of moving this forward within the dating life, the dating world. What advice would you get? Like, what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself 10 years ago? Not specific to you per se, but just something that you think is like, regardless of what walk you come from, like something you wish you had known a decade ago.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. I would say I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, and I mean that in the most sincere way. And it's not just because, yeah, hopefully the universe is conspiring in my favor. You know, God loves us, and He has a plan for us, and I do believe that comes down to even like moment by moment, and that if we receive it as a gift, like that's what He wants for us. Of course, that's complicated when there's sin involved, and there's always sin involved. So yeah, we just go back to 30-year-old me and just say, never sin again. Stop the sinning stuff.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah.
being so like weak, and try to root out the concupiscence. But I mean, that's kind of part of the issue is how does the sin aspect affect these sorts of things? Like, but you can't take that too far, because I specifically remember in this engagement that I was in thinking, if only I was a better man, then this will be easier. Then we can make this work. Then we can get married and actually be happy and live happily. You can't put the weight of the world on your own shoulders to be perfectly perfect. So yeah, I would just say, and I've thought about this in other ways too, but I think it also rings true in terms of dating. That would you rather continue to scour the ends of the universe, the perfect match, or would you rather pick one and start the rest of your life together? Which is not to say there were women that if I just would have selected, that I would be happily ever after by now. And I think it's important to say that it takes two to tango. Like, it's kind of like when we talk about the vocation to priesthood. Like, a man can show up at the bishop's door and say, "Ordain me to be a priest. I'm called," and be like, "Oh, buddy, I will decide." That's good. You have a say in the matter. Don't get me wrong, but I'll decide. The seminary will decide. To a certain extent, the community will decide. And the same thing's true about marriage. Like, you feel called to be married. You can be called. You can feel called to be married to one particular person, but that person has to agree, and that the timing has to match up, and your family has to agree to a certain extent, and the community, and the priest and the church and everything else. So without saying like, oh, I would be married by now, or this would have changed everything, my advice would still be something to the effect of, you do have a limited amount of time on earth, and even the way that you like, the risks that you take or don't take, sometimes, there's risks that you should take, and that by not taking them, that you're missing out on things. Marriage, I think, is a risk, big risk, but it's a really good risk, and that's the best kind of risk. So yeah, maybe it's a matter of, don't think that you have unlimited amounts of time. Time goes faster than you think it might. And also that freedom and the ability to choose, and maybe even to delay those choices, is not necessarily better than choosing something.
Yeah. That's great advice and great perspective. And not to compare it to like food choices on a menu, but like, people always him and haw, and sometimes like just making a choice, and like that's a better process than looking for perfection. As you say, scouring the ends of the earth. And by
Yeah.
the way, to everybody listening, like I did not give Isaac like a script of stuff I'd ask him. So
No, he did
like
not. I can vouch.
like give us both grace that we're sort of spitballing here a little bit, and I'm asking some questions that it's not like he had time to think out and prepare, but I think that that's great perspective.
No, I
I
think that, and
really
I think the food thing is worth saying, and I think it does kind of bring us back to the very beginning, like how much differently is the dating thing now? Like, there are some restaurants you go to, they have like 8 or 10 pages of food that you can choose
yeah.
from. Sometimes 3 to 5 pages of drinks. And some restaurants have much smaller menus, and maybe you have three things to choose from or whatever. And studies have shown sometimes when you have fewer choices, you're actually happier with your choice. So I think there's something to think about in terms of, yeah, we've got probably more choices, particularly for dating, than we ever have. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe not, but I think sometimes it does prove to be more of a challenge than otherwise.
And on that note, speaking of food and drink, for those of you that don't know, Isaac is also like a expert mixologist. Did you actually go to bartending school?
I do have a certificate from the Minnesota School of Bartending, which is not at all where I learned any of the best drinks that I can make. It's kind of a precursor to like getting your GED.
Huh.
It's like, oh, this will be a faster way to learn what I want to. And it's like, well, it was faster, but did I actually learn some real good stuff? I learned that later in the actual restaurant industry. And also just experimenting on my friends, like Johnny.
Yeah. Like Johnny. And the other thing is, Isaac's a foodie because my favorite restaurant in St. Paul that you introduced me to, it's actually like a block away from my brother-in-law, is name the restaurant. You know what it is.
Gotta be Estelle.
Amazing food. If you're ever in St.
Really.
Paul, hit up Estelle. It is, they have like a happy hour menu with like amuse bouches and different cocktails and
Yeah.
like sangria that's to die for. Great, great little joint, hole in the wall, but awesome place.
Far from Nativity of our Lord.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And on that note, for anybody that would like Isaac's information for purposes of asking him on a date, feel free. I think on the Spotify there's like an administrator, and I will give you Isaac's credentials so that you guys can hit up Isaac. Hopefully, who knows, Isaac, maybe I could get invited to your wedding and be like, it all started on the Catholic Passage podcast.
I will make a commitment that yes, if I meet my wife through this Catholic Passage podcast, you will be my first invitation to my wedding.
Awesome. Thank you, Isaac. I appreciate you joining us
Hey, thank you, Johnny.
and being vulnerable, because I realize this is kind of a tough topic to talk about too. Like
Yeah, you're
it's
not gonna
something-
actually like publish this, right?
yeah, and don't worry, you'll have no editorial discretion as to what we like. It's raw and unedited. It's like the Jerry Springer show. We can't edit it. It has to be like just what you see is what you get.
All right.
Crickets. All right. Thanks, Isaac.
Thanks, Johnny.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Later.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Catholic Passage podcast, and we hope that it blesses you. Please check out our show notes for a reflection takeaway, as well as more info on Catholic Passage. We aim to support parents and educators as they pass on the Catholic faith and the way of life to their children and students. To find out more about what we offer, or how you might collaborate with us, visit CatholicPassage.com. Most importantly, you can support us through your prayers. We'll be praying for you. Please pray for us.